In the darkness of a large hospital in Baltimore, an ordinary black nurse suddenly becomes the target of a wealthy and powerful benefactor. From bouquets that seem harmless to whispered threats, he turns her life into an invisible cage. But when hope appears to be extinguished, a warm gaze emerges, opening a way out: love, the law, and solidarity. This is not merely a story about a lawsuit or a romance, but a woman's journey reclaiming her freedom, dignity, and the right to live in peace for herself and the child she is about to bring into the world. Baltimore General Hospital, a gloomy Tuesday evening at the end of winter. The white corridors stretched endlessly, the sharp stench of disinfectant creeping into the nose of anyone who walked through the door. Monica Daniels was used to all of it: the cold fluorescent lights, the beeping monitors, the hurried footsteps of doctors, and the word stat echoing across departments. 10 years as an ER nurse taught her to stay alert in chaos. But tonight, in that suffocating space, something else pressed in, a thick fear, so heavy she felt her lungs being crushed from within. The supply closet door clicked shut behind her, leaving a dense darkness with only a thin line of light spilling in from the crack. Monica tried to back away, but her spine hit the freezing metal shelf. Boxes of gauze and saline toppled down, clattering at her feet, the sound reverberating like hammers striking her backbone. A pale hand with perfectly trimmed nails clamped her wrist, each bone threatening to snap under the pressure. Bradley Whitmore stood so close that Monica could feel his expensive cologne suffocating her like a veil over her face. It was the scent too familiar at the hospital's fundraising galas, the type of cologne only someone who spent thousands on a tiny bottle would dare to drench themselves in. But behind it lingered something else, bitter, reeking of arrogance, the stench of a man who knew he would never pay for anything. "You think you can avoid me forever, Monica?" Bradley whispered, his voice soft as silk but saturated with venom. "You're so naive." His words cut into her ear like a cold blade. Monica wanted to scream, but her throat was strangled by both his hand and the terror that silenced her voice. All she could do was gasp, her heartbeat thundering, ready to explode from her chest. She remembered Christmas Eve 3 months and 2 weeks ago, the night everything was stolen. The hospital's annual gala, when laughter, wine, and promises of donations filled the air. Bradley, the generous benefactor whose name adorned an entire pediatric wing, had smiled and offered to drive her home because it's late, too unsafe for a nurse to walk alone. Monica had believed him because the entire hospital believed in the image of a gentleman who had donated tens of millions. But instead of driving her home, he had pulled into the dark corner of the parking lot, and there she lost everything: her safety, trust, and sense of being human. Since that night, she had never slept through a single night. Nightmares chased every breath. And now, as his hand crushed her wrist, the memories surged back like a flood, leaving her dizzy. "You raped me." Monica forced the words out, trembling. "You have no right over me." Bradley chuckled softly, the laugh of a man accustomed to power, a laugh reporters once called the $1,000,000 smile. To Monica, it was nothing but the mask of a demon. "Rape? Oh, Monica, you should learn to choose your words more carefully." He leaned closer, his breath of expensive mint washing over her face. "That was a wonderful night, a gift you should be grateful for." She turned her face away, revolted. His nails scraped lightly against her skin, leaving a red mark. Monica tried to pull back, but it was useless. "You owe me, Monica, and I'll collect that debt whenever I want. Do you understand?" His gaze slid down to her flat stomach, but Monica knew the secret growing there. She had counted every week. 14. The baby was living proof of the crime, a ticking bomb waiting to explode. Bradley leaned even closer, his whisper dripping with malice. "I know your secret, and believe me, it would be such a shame if your esteemed colleagues discovered the way you've climbed your career ladder by seducing a donor." Monica's breath caught. The blood in her body seemed to rush to her head. She knew he had the power to turn lies into truth. In this society, who would believe a black nurse from West Baltimore? Who would dare stand against the man who had poured $50 million into the children's hospital? "Please." The word "please" sliced her like a knife. Monica hated herself for it, but survival forced her to beg. Please, leave me alone. I won't say anything. I swear, Bradley scoffed, releasing her suddenly. Monica stumbled against the shelf, her scrubs tearing slightly at the side. She gasped, trying to steady herself. Listen carefully, Monica. He adjusted his Armani suit gracefully, as if he were still on the donor stage. I'll be in touch. You'd better know how to respond. Don't force me to. Get creative in keeping your attention. The door slammed behind him, leaving Monica in suffocating darkness. She stood frozen, shoulders trembling. Only when his footsteps faded down the hall did she let herself collapse to the floor, clutching her belly, her breath breaking into sobs. 15 minutes later, Monica washed her face in the staff restroom, scrubbing until her skin burned. The reflection staring back was a stranger. Bloodshot eyes, ashen skin, trembling lips, struggling to hold composure. She forced herself to pull on her mask, adjust her uniform, and walk out as if nothing had happened. The shift went on. Patients still needed care. That was the mask she had worn for 3.5 months, the mask of a dedicated nurse, while underneath, her world shattered piece by piece. The ER hallway of Baltimore General buzzed louder than ever when Monica returned to the station. Ambulance sirens wailed outside. Automatic doors opened and shut, and footsteps clattered across cold tiles. To any other nurse, it was just another busy shift, but to Monica, every sound warped, as if filtered through heavy water. She forced a faint smile at her colleagues. Margaret, the head nurse, called out firmly, "Daniels, trauma bay try, scaffolding collapse, multiple trauma. I need you sharp." Monica nodded. That was the one thing she could still trust, her skill. Even with a shattered soul, her hands knew exactly what to do. She pulled on gloves, adjusted her mask, and dove into the trauma room like a machine. The gurney burst through the door, EMTs shouting as they pushed. Male, about 30, scaffolding collapse, fractured left ribs, dislocated shoulder, deep laceration to forehead. Blood pressure 90/60, pulse 120. Monica ran alongside, checking the IV line and attaching monitors. But when her eyes met the patient's face, time slowed. Deep brown eyes opened slightly, locking onto her. Not the frantic look of a patient in pain, but the look of someone who saw her, saw the fear, the darkness she fought to hide. "What's your name?" Monica asked automatically. "Daniel." Cruz. His voice was hoarse with pain, yet strangely warm. "And yours?" The question made her pause. Patients rarely asked a nurse's name, but Daniel had asked, and his eyes never left hers. "Daniels. Nurse Daniels," she replied, forcing professionalism. "I'll check your head wound now." She wiped the blood from his forehead, her hands trembling. Daniel frowned, not from pain, but from noticing. His gaze dropped to her wrist, where fresh bruises darkened her skin. "Someone hurt you," he whispered. Monica froze, her heart pounding. No one had ever said it aloud. Colleagues might glance, but they always pretended not to see. Because who dared suspect Bradley Whitmore, the hospital's great benefactor? "I'm fine," she answered quickly, too quickly. Daniel narrowed his eyes, as if reading every fold of her soul. "No, you're not." The words fell heavy, like stones. Monica inhaled sharply, tried to steady herself, and kept stitching. Outside, familiar laughter rang out. The sound froze her. Bradley. He was standing in the hallway, chatting with the hospital board, shining like a star among admirers. The sound of him was enough to send sweat down her back, her hands trembling so much the needle slipped. Daniel noticed. He asked no more, but his eyes hardened, as if he understood something. The trauma case ended. Daniel was moved to observation. Monica left the trauma bay, her steps heavy, but as she blended back into the shift, a soft voice called her name. "Monica." She turned. Daniel lay on the gurney, exhausted but clear-eyed. He reached out, his hand brushing hers before she could pull away. The touch was not possessive, not threatening. It carried an unspoken message. "I see you, and you're not alone." Monica didn't know why she cried afterward, alone in the empty break room. Maybe because, For the first time in 3.5 months, someone saw her wounds without judging, ignoring, or exploiting them. But just as hope flickered, fear returned. Bradley knew about her pregnancy. He wouldn't stop. And now, she had accidentally drawn a stranger into the danger with her. Monica wiped her tears, fixed her scrubs, and returned to her shift. But inside, a small seed had just sprouted a seed of hope. Every morning, Monica Daniels looked at herself in the mirror of the cramped bathroom in her one-bedroom apartment on the west side of Baltimore. The weak yellow bulb overhead cast a pale light, making her skin look even more drained. On the sink lay 3 pregnancy tests stacked together, silent witnesses. She no longer needed to look, she knew the number by heart. 14 weeks, 3 days. She pulled on her green scrubs, trying to hide the lower belly that was beginning to show. At the hospital, everyone was busy with shifts, patient charts, and emergency calls. But Monica knew it wouldn't be long before they noticed. An unmarried nurse, her belly swelling, people would whisper. And in those whispers, if even one person mentioned Bradley Whitmore's name, everything would be over. On the bus to the hospital, the vehicle rocked through impoverished neighborhoods, walls stained and plastered with cheap cigarette ads. Monica sat curled up, her hand unconsciously shielding her stomach. Here, no one knew who she was, just another passenger. But inside, the weight pressed down like a stone. How can I be a mother, keep my job, and escape him all at once? At the hospital, Monica moved like a shadow. She spoke little and rarely joined co-workers for lunch. Once, she had been the one telling jokes in the break room, sharing bizarre patient stories. Now, she often sat alone, pretending to read charts. Her colleagues had begun to notice. "Daniels, you've lost weight lately, but your belly looks," a young nurse blurted, then quickly fell silent when Monica's sharp glare cut her off. Rumors spread down the corridors. Someone said Monica had a secret boyfriend. Another whispered she was being supported by a donor. Each word was a needle piercing her skin day after day. In her tiny apartment, Monica held her stomach at night, listening in her imagination to the baby's heartbeat. The child was innocent, yet every time she thought of her biological father, her gut twisted. She remembered Bradley's eyes, his voice speaking of a lifelong obligation. That fear had burrowed into her very bones. At times, she thought of abortion, but each time she stood outside an OB clinic, her feet wouldn't move. A part of her whispered that the child's existence was proof, an undeniable truth. If she erased it, no one would remember the crime. He would be clean again, donate, and be praised in the press. So Monica endured. She bought looser clothes and wore long coats even in the hospital halls. But the concealment drained her further. Long night shifts left her nauseous, crouching in the restroom for minutes before she could return to patients. No one knew the truth. No one came close enough to ask. Only when Daniel Cruz happened to catch sight of her belly twitching during a wave of nausea did Monica realize she couldn't hide forever. He didn't question her, didn't press, just looked silently and nodded as if to say, "I see, I understand." That silence made Monica feel both grateful and terrified, because if an outsider like Daniel could notice, then surely Bradley would too. And once he knew, he would turn this truth into eternal chains. Monica sat in the break room, palms on her stomach. The pregnancy was no longer just a private matter. It was a heavy secret that could destroy her career and life. After a grueling shift late Friday evening, Monica exited the ER, searching for a quiet corner to breathe. The nurse's lounge at the far end of the 3rd floor was nearly empty. She sat down, pulled out the packed lunchbox, but didn't open it. Her stomach ached lightly, her breath quickened. She took out a small notebook, its corners frayed, always hidden in her coat pocket. The first page listed numbers, the date of her last period, the Christmas gala, and the weeks of pregnancy. The following page was a list of names, OBGYNs in Baltimore, women's support organizations, and a sexual assault hotline, all written, all crossed out, as though each option had only deepened her despair. The door swung open. A coworker entered, carrying the smell of fresh coffee. "Monica, you're not eating." "You've been looking worn out lately." Monica forced a smile. "I'm not hungry." Her co-worker shrugged and left. The door closed, leaving her in silence again. She wrapped her arms around her belly, sensing the baby's faint presence. Strangely, in that moment, fear didn't consume her completely. A small part of her whispered, "This child is mine, not his." The thought made her cry out of pain, but also from the desperate longing to believe it. That night, back in her small apartment, Monica turned on the old TV to push back the silence. On screen, the local news showed Bradley Whitmore cutting the ribbon at a new playground he had funded. The anchor praised his golden heart, children's smiles filling the broadcast. Monica gripped the remote, her hand trembling. The TV showed him hugging a curly-haired little girl, smiling kindly. She switched it off abruptly, her pulse racing. In the darkness, she felt like she was suffocating. The whole city revered him, while only she knew the truth. The world would stand with him. She was just a nameless nurse. Monica crawled into bed, clutching her belly. Tears soaked her pillow. She thought about the future. If she spoke, her career would collapse. No one would believe her, and her child could be dragged into a monster's grasp. If she stayed silent, her life would remain a prison. Either way, she was trapped. But in that bleak night, at her lowest, an image returned. Daniel's eyes in the trauma bay, gentle yet unyielding. He had seen the bruises. He hadn't mocked, hadn't ignored. He had only said, "You're not okay." Monica didn't know if she could trust anyone now. But for the first time in months, she felt there might be a fragile, faint possibility that she wasn't completely alone. She closed her eyes, her hand still resting on her belly. The baby stirred faintly, as if whispering, "Mom, live, find a way." And Monica knew, no matter how deep her fear, she had to keep going. This secret was too heavy to carry alone forever. The wail of ambulance sirens once again filled the ER of Baltimore General. Monica was long used to that sound, but tonight, it startled her. She was arranging a tray of medications when the trauma bay doors burst open, and a team of EMTs rushed in with a stretcher. Mail. About 35. Construction accident. Scaffolding collapse. Left shoulder temporarily stabilized. Possible rib fractures. Bleeding from forehead laceration. Blood pressure dropping, one EMT reported. Monica hurried over. Her hands moved by instinct, checking the IV line, preparing oxygen, threading a suture needle. But when her eyes landed on the patient, everything froze. The man on the stretcher, his face smeared with blood, still had his deep brown eyes open, watching her. Not with panic like other patients, but calm, steady, and strangely warm. For a fleeting moment, Monica felt he was seeing straight through the invisible armor she had worn for months. "Can you hear me?" Monica asked firmly. "Clear." "Enough," he rasped. Then his lips curled slightly. "My name's Daniel Cruz." Monica blinked. The man was bleeding out, yet still clinging to his name as if to tether himself. She leaned down to check his pupils, then answered softly, "I'm Nurse Daniels. I need to stitch your wound right now." Daniel flinched when the antiseptic touched his skin. Monica placed the sutures, her hands skilled but trembling. Daniel noticed. His gaze slipped to her wrist where fresh bruises were still stark. "Someone hurt you," he whispered, hoarse but certain. Monica froze, her needle veering slightly. In all these months, no one had said it aloud. Everyone pretended not to see or chose silence. Yet this stranger, bleeding and broken, saw it at once. "I'm fine," she answered quickly, almost reflexively. Daniel held her gaze. "No, you're not. I can see it." His words were soft, yet they weighed like stone. Monica's heart clenched, as if a locked door had cracked open. But she immediately rebuilt the wall. "Focus on your wound. You've lost too much blood." Daniel said nothing more, letting her work, but his eyes stayed on her, leaving Monica shaken and with an unfamiliar sensation, the feeling of being seen, truly seen after months in the dark. The trauma bay doors opened, and laughter echoed down the hall. A familiar laugh that made Monica's blood run cold. Bradley Whitmore. He was chatting with a hospital board, his voice smooth, confident. The sound was a blade straight to her chest. Monica's hand trembled, nearly losing the suture thread. Daniel noticed. His eyes hardened, protective. Without a single question, he seemed to understand. Her fear was bound to that name. The trauma case ended. Daniel was moved to recovery. Monica stood watching, her mind in turmoil. She had buried her pain, but one look, one sentence, had pulled it back into the light. For the first time in months, she no longer felt completely invisible. After her shift, Monica trudged down the long hallway, shoulders heavy as stone. She only wanted to leave and retreat to her silent apartment. But behind her came familiar footsteps. Monica. She turned. Daniel Cruz, wheeled in a chair, called softly. His head was still bandaged, hospital gown hanging loosely, but his eyes hadn't lost their strength. They locked onto hers, quickening her heartbeat. "You should rest," she said, her tone stiff, guarding distance. "I just wanted to thank you," Daniel replied, breath still uneven. "You saved me, not just my body." Monica faltered. His words struck where she was weakest, where she had hidden everything. She clutched the file folder in her hands, deflecting. "It's my job. I do that for every patient." Daniel tilted his head. "But not every patient sees you tremble at a man's laugh in the hallway. Not every patient sees the weight you're carrying." Monica's knees weakened. She wanted to deny it, but his eyes glowed with truth, swallowing her words. "You don't know anything about me," she managed. "Maybe," Daniel said, his voice lowering, "but I know the eyes of someone in pain. I saw them in my sister. She hid it too, said she was fine, until she almost lost everything, and I swore I wouldn't look away if I ever saw those eyes again." Monica couldn't bear it. She turned, heart pounding, tears blurring her vision. The ER doors closed behind her, but his words stayed. "I won't look away." That night, Monica sat by the window in her apartment, staring at the dark street. Her belly shifted, the baby turning. She laid her hand over it, tears streaming. Daniel's words both frightened her and sparked a faint light. Someone had noticed. Someone had seen. But could she trust? Trusting meant pulling him into the danger, into Bradley's trap. When Monica arrived at the hospital the next morning, she saw Daniel sitting in the waiting area, holding a small bouquet. Not roses dripping with money, like the ones Bradley once used to threaten her, but wild daisies wrapped in newspaper. When he spotted her, he smiled a smile without judgment, without calculation. "Good morning, Nurse Daniels," he said. "I thought your long shifts could use something gentle." Monica froze. For a moment, she wanted to refuse, to walk away, but her hand reached out on its own, taking the flowers. She inhaled, their simple scent filling her lungs. For the first time in months, Monica felt alive. Daniel asked nothing more. He just sat there, left the bouquet, and went with the orderly. But his eyes, that steady, piercing gaze, followed her all day. Monica knew her life had just turned onto a new path, a dangerous one, but one that might finally hold hope. The basement parking lot of Baltimore General was usually deserted at night. The yellowed neon lights flickered. The ventilation hummed endlessly. Monica Daniels had always hated this place. Narrow, dark, full of hidden corners. But her night shift had just ended, and she had no choice but to go down, walking quickly toward her old sedan. The sound of leather shoes echoed on the concrete. Monica froze. The footsteps were familiar, too familiar. Her heart clenched, cold sweat breaking out. "Monica." Bradley Whitmore's voice rang out behind her, smooth as honey, but it was claws scraping a wall to her. She turned. He stepped out of the shadows, perfect black suit, a faint smile on his lips. "What are you doing here?" Monica forced her voice to stay steady, though her hands trembled. "I came to talk. It's been too long since we were alone." Bradley strolled, every step deliberate. He stopped, blocking her from her car. "I miss you." "Get out of the way," Monica said, backing up until her spine pressed against the car door. Bradley tilted his head, his eyes sharp as razors. "Do you remember what I told you last time? That we share a permanent bond?" His gaze dropped to her belly, heavy with implication. "You can't deny it." Monica instinctively held her stomach. "This baby has nothing to do with you." "On the contrary, His smile sharpened into ice. "It's proof that you belong to me." Monica wanted to scream, to strike him, but fear shackled her body. And then, a voice cut in from the distance. "Excuse me, could you point me to the elevator?" Bradley turned. A tall, strong man emerged from the hallway. Daniel Cruz. He wore a simple jacket, holding a hospital map as if genuinely lost. But when his eyes flicked toward Monica, they glimmered with recognition. "Ah, Mr. Whitmore." Daniel feigned surprise. "Didn't expect to see you here. I'm just looking for the guest exit." Bradley stiffened slightly but recovered quickly, flashing his polished smile. "Mr. Cruz, I was just checking on a few things for the hospital. You know, donor responsibilities." Meanwhile, Monica's breath came short. She seized the moment to slip sideways, unlocking her car. Daniel stepped closer, subtly positioning himself between her and Bradley. He smirked lightly. "Exactly. And someone with responsibilities should make sure staff are safe, especially the nurses." Bradley's smile faded. His pale eyes narrowed, icy, but he couldn't reveal more. Monica slid into her car, shutting the door. "We'll talk later, Monica," he muttered darkly, before turning and walking away. Daniel tapped gently on her window, leaning down. "You okay?" Monica nodded shakily, tears brimming. Daniel said quietly, "If you need me, I'm only one call away. Here's my number." He handed her a small card, the digits written neatly by hand. She took it, her heart both frantic and warmed. When Daniel left, Monica sat motionless in the car, clutching the card like a lifeline. For the first time, in the darkness of the parking lot, she felt she had an ally. That night, Monica drove home with her hands trembling on the wheel. The scene replayed endlessly in her mind. Bradley's cold smile, the trap closing in, and then Daniel's sudden presence, his words breaking the chokehold. Monica sat at the table in her small apartment, opening her bag. Daniel's card was still in her palm, wrinkled from her grip at home. The handwritten number was plain but firm. She placed it on the table, staring at it like a doorway she wasn't ready to cross. She couldn't sleep. She thought of Daniel's eyes, not pitying, not prying, but understanding. He had stepped into danger without hesitation to give her space to breathe. Does he realize who he's dealing with? She wondered. Bradley wasn't ordinary. He had money, power, and political ties. If caught in the web, a man like Daniel could be crushed. Yet her heart whispered back, "Someone stood with me." The next day, Bradley didn't show up at the hospital. But Monica knew the silence wasn't mercy. It was plotting. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. Every time a man in a suit passed by, her skin crawled. Still, the memory of Daniel planted something else. Hope. During her break, Monica pulled the card from her pocket, her finger brushing the numbers. She didn't call, but keeping it tucked against her chest, like a talisman, steadied her enough to face the shift. 3 days later, leaving the hospital, she saw Daniel at a small cafe across the street. He didn't wave. He just sat quietly, reading a file. A second cup of mint tea was on the table beside his coffee. When Monica's eyes met his, he smiled faintly as if to say, "If you want to join, you can. If not, I'll still be here." No pressure. Monica hesitated. She kept walking, then stopped. Her fingers found the card in her pocket. One deep breath, and she crossed the street. Sitting down across from him, Monica stayed silent. Daniel pushed the tea toward her. "I didn't know what you liked, but I guessed something gentle might suit you better than bitter coffee." Monica nodded slightly, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. The heat spread through her fingers, comforting. "Thank you for that night," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No thanks needed. I couldn't look away." He paused, his voice softening. "You don't have to carry this alone, Monica." Tears welled in her eyes. Such simple words, but they were what she had waited 3 months to hear. She turned her face away, unwilling to let him see her break. But inside, a small door creaked open. The meeting lasted only 15 minutes. But when she left the cafe, Monica felt changed. The darkness around her wasn't as suffocating. Daniel hadn't demanded, hadn't pried. He had been present, and that presence alone made her feel not completely alone. Somewhere in the city's shadows, Bradley was surely still watching. But that night, when Monica closed her apartment door, she touched her belly and whispered, "I'll find a way. I won't let him take you." And in her heart, the name Daniel Cruz echoed like the fragile beginning of faith. Harbor Brew Cafe is nestled on a street facing Baltimore's harbor, its warm golden lights spilling through fogged glass. Monica sat in the farthest corner, hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea, her heart pounding as if she were about to perform a high-risk surgery. This was the first time she had agreed to meet Daniel since the parking lot incident. The door opened, and Daniel entered. No suit, no polished air of a successful businessman, just a simple wool coat. His face still weary from the accident, but his eyes unwaveringly bright. When he saw Monica, he nodded. No rush, no pressure. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said, sliding into the seat across from her. Monica gripped her cup tighter, her voice small. "I don't know if I should be here." "You don't owe me anything," Daniel replied calmly, "but I don't think anyone should suffer alone. If you want to sit silently, I'll be silent too." In that moment, Monica saw no pity in him, only patience. And it was that patience that loosened her lips. She began with fragments, bruises, fear, the sense of being followed. Then, piece by piece, the story tumbled out like bricks collapsing Christmas Eve. The parking lot, the violent hands, the threats, and finally, the secret inside her belly. Daniel sat silently, his eyes darkening with anger, but never interrupted. When Monica finally stopped, exhausted from confessing, he spoke slowly. "What you've described, it's a crime, not just cruelty, but a felony, and he cannot be allowed to continue." "You don't understand." Monica shook her head, her voice breaking. "He has money, lawyers, the whole hospital behind him. I'm just a nurse. Who would believe me?" Daniel paused, then pulled out his phone, dialing. "I know someone who will, and who will fight." 15 minutes later, the cafe door opened again. A woman in a long coat walked in, her short dark hair framing sharp eyes that still carried warmth. Daniel stood. "Monica, this is Sofia Ramirez, attorney, my friend." Sofia shook Monica's hand, a steady grip, the handshake forged in court battles. "Daniel told me you need protection. If you're ready, I'll listen and believe you." Monica met Sofia's eyes. No hollow comfort like "it'll be okay," just seriousness, commitment, and a spark of anger on her behalf. For the first time, Monica nodded. They sat, 3 people in the cafe corner. Sofia opened a notebook, asking carefully about dates, evidence, messages, and witnesses. Her tone was calm, each question a brick building a wall. Monica's hands trembled as she answered, but inside, she began to feel a framework holding her up. After over an hour, Sofia closed the notebook. "We'll need additional protection, both legal and physical. I'll now connect you with Marcus Rivera, an ex-cop in private security. He knows how to handle men like Bradley Whitmore." Monica lowered her head, tears dripping into her cold tea. Fear still clung, but for the first time, another feeling surged. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. 2 days later, the meeting with Marcus Rivera occurred at Sofia's law office. The office overlooked Inner Harbor from the 11th floor, walls lined with files and thick law books. Monica entered hesitantly, skepticism weighing her steps. The man waiting had a solid build, grey streaks in his hair, and his short suit was neat and functional. His eyes scanned Monica, as though he could read her history of wounds in a glance. He shook her hand, firm, not cruel. "I've heard from Daniel and Sofia," he began. "Monica, right now, the most important thing is your safety and your baby's. Before the law moves, we must ensure Bradley can't reach you." Monica pulled her hand back, glancing at Sofia and Daniel. They nodded gently, urging trust. Marcus spread files across the table, hospital maps, photos of parking lot corners, notes on Bradley's visits. "I've watched him for a week. He hunts in shadows, always choosing spots with few cameras, few witnesses. But habits are weaknesses." Monica sat frozen, Hearing Marcus break down Bradley's patterns felt like someone had finally shone a light into the same darkness that haunted her. "We'll install extra cameras along your routes. I'll set up a team to monitor, both on-site and remote. Most importantly, Monica, you'll never walk out of the hospital or your home alone again. Isn't that too extreme?" she whispered. "No," Marcus said firmly. "This is standard against men with money and power. He's used to winning, used to people being afraid. My job is to break that habit." Sophia added, "While Marcus handles security, I'll start building the legal case. Every flower, every message, every contact documented, time-stamped, archived. When it's thick enough, this file becomes a wall." Monica sat quietly, her chest tightening and easing all at once. She had never imagined needing both a lawyer and a security team. But when she looked at Daniel and saw his unwavering determination, she understood. This fight was no longer hers alone. "Monica," Daniel said firmly, his voice steady, "you're not only fighting for yourself, you're fighting so that our daughter," he stopped, correcting himself, "your baby, is born into safety, not fear." Tears spilled down Monica's cheeks. She nodded. She saw not just escape, but a plan for the first time. A path forward, not just fleeing in the dark, but standing and facing, with allies at her side. When the meeting ended, Marcus walked Monica to the hallway. His voice was rough, like someone who had seen too much. "I've met many women like you, and many men like him. They think they're untouchable. But believe me, every predator falls. The only question is whether the victim has enough allies to hold out until then. And now you do." Stepping out of the building, Monica drew a long breath of harbor wind. In her hand, Marcus's card rested beside Daniel's. She clenched both tight, as if gripping twin lifelines. Monica slept through that night in her apartment for the first time in months. Not dreamless, but when she woke, she no longer felt alone in the dark. The following week at Baltimore General felt strangely different. The hospital's frantic rhythm was the same: sirens, rushing gurneys, the clipped commands of doctors. But Monica Daniels walked the halls with something she hadn't felt in months: a thin layer of armor. Marcus Rivera's security team had begun their work quietly. Extra cameras appeared along dim hallways and the basement garage. A pair of plainclothes officers blended into the cafeteria crowd. Even when Monica didn't see them, she knew they were there, watching, guarding. Sophia Ramirez, meanwhile, began stitching together the case file. She called Monica every evening, asking for updates. Any flowers? Any calls? Any unexpected visitors? Each time Monica forwarded another text from Bradley or a photo of roses left at her locker, Sophia's voice grew colder, steadier. "Good. That's another piece for the record." Yet fear never entirely left Monica. Bradley had not confronted her directly since the parking lot, but his shadow stretched everywhere. She would walk past the pediatric wing and see his name etched in gold above the entrance. She would hear colleagues praising Mr. Whitmore's generosity at the nurses' station. She would feel the weight of his power pressing in from every angle. One evening, as Monica finished charting a patient's vitals, Margaret, the head nurse, approached her. "Daniels, can I speak with you a moment?" Monica's chest tightened. Margaret led her into the supply room and closed the door. "Listen," she said quietly. "I don't know what's going on, but I've seen how Whitmore looks at you. I've also seen your hands shake after his visits. You ask if I need to cover a shift or walk you out. Understood?" Monica blinked, startled. For months, she had thought no one noticed, or worse, that no one cared. Her throat burned as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, Monica sat at her kitchen table, her hands resting on her growing belly. She thought of Daniel's unwavering gaze, Sophia's firm handshake, Marcus's steady plan, and now Margaret's quiet solidarity. One by one, threads were weaving into a net beneath her, but nets could tear. A package addressed to her arrived at the 3-day-old nurse's station. Monica froze when she saw the handwriting Bradley's. A single white baby dress, delicate lace, wrapped in tissue paper, was inside. Beneath it, a note: "Our child deserves the finest. Stop fighting what you cannot change. B. W." Monica's stomach lurched. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the box. Margaret, standing nearby, glanced over her shoulder, and her face hardened. "This goes to Sophia," she said flatly, slamming the lid shut. "Right now." An hour later, Monica sat in Sophia's office, the package sealed in an evidence bag. Daniel was there too, jaw clenched, fists tight. Sophia spoke with icy calm. "This is an escalation. He's not just threatening you anymore, he's trying to stake a claim over your baby. That strengthens our case." Marcus leaned against the wall, his eyes sharp. "It also means he's getting desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. We'll be ready." Monica looked at the three of them, her lawyer, protector, and unlikely ally who had refused to look away. For months, she had been trapped in Bradley's invisible cage. Now, piece by piece, she felt the bars beginning to bend. Still, she knew the war was far from over. That night, as rain battered the windows of her apartment, Monica held the evidence bag containing the baby dress. Her reflection in the plastic stared back at her, tired, scared, but no longer broken. She whispered to the life inside her belly, "We're not alone anymore," and for the first time, she almost believed it. A week passed after the meeting with Sophia and Marcus, and the air around Monica shifted. Not because Bradley had vanished, on the contrary, his presence was thicker than ever. But this time, Monica wasn't completely alone. Outside her apartment door, Marcus's unmarked patrol car idled. On the phone, Sophia walked her through every step of evidence logging, and each night, Daniel showed up with a hot meal, sitting quietly beside her, so the silence no longer felt unbearable. Bradley knew precisely how to wear victims down. Instead of direct threats, he chose subtle tricks, just enough to plant fear, but never enough to leave irrefutable proof. On the first day, a bouquet of white roses arrived at the nurse's station with a small card, "Thinking of our future." To her co-workers, it looked like the gesture of a secret admirer. But Monica knew only one man was brazen enough to send that message. On the third day, her usual parking space was blocked by a sleek BMW. Not a coincidence, Monica recognized the license plate from Marcus's list of Bradley's company cars. She was forced to walk 3 dark basement levels to find another spot, her pulse pounding the entire way. On the 5th day, Harbor Brew, the cafe where she had first met Daniel and Sophia, was suddenly flooded with 1-star reviews online. Full of fabricated complaints about staff gossiping about private customers, the owner was furious. But Monica understood. Bradley's message was clear. "Every place you feel safe, I can ruin." Meanwhile, Sophia demanded meticulous documentation. Every bouquet, every text, every suspicious car photographed, time-stamped, and sent to her office. Marcus intensified surveillance, installing hidden cameras near the parking garage, planting recorders in Monica's apartment mailbox. "Does this feel like too much?" Marcus asked one evening as he tested equipment. Monica hesitated, then shook her head. "If we don't do this, I'll never sleep." But even with safeguards, Monica felt her mind being eroded. Bradley didn't need to touch her, stretch her nerves so taut that she was constantly alert. At work, she endured colleagues' curious stares when flowers arrived. At home, every creak in the hallway sent her heart racing. Even with Daniel beside her, a buzzing phone could make her flinch. One evening, she broke down at the dinner table. Daniel slid his chair close, taking her hands. "He's winning," Monica sobbed. "Without lifting a finger, he's filling every corner of my mind." Daniel squeezed tighter, voice steady. "No, Monica, he's exposing himself. And every trick he plays becomes evidence. Let him dig his own grave." She lifted her head, meeting his steady eyes. A shard of strength stirred in her chest. Yet deep inside, she knew the battle was only beginning. By the end of the second week, tension spiked. An administrative staffer from the hospital called Monica, hesitant. Daniels, someone requested your personnel file. It was claimed to be for updating the donor board's records. But when I checked, there was no official request. I thought you should know." Monica dropped the phone, her stomach lurching. She didn't need to ask, only Bradley was bold enough to pry into her private records. He was trying to legitimize surveillance, to turn her privacy into his playground. She immediately called Sophia. Within an hour, Monica was sitting in the law office, trembling. Sophia slid a folder across the desk. "Marcus just confirmed Bradley has hired a private investigation team. They've been photographing you leaving the hospital, shopping, even waiting for the bus. That's technically legal until this." She pointed to a transcript. "Here, a recording of one of them trying to bribe a hospital clerk for your medical file." Monica shivered. "Oh my God." "The good news," Sophia said, her tone razor-sharp, "is that this is a major blunder. Surveillance in public spaces may be legal, but bribery to obtain medical records? That's a federal crime. We now have a witness and audio proof, and Marcus is collecting more." Daniel rested a hand on her shoulder. "He's trapping himself." Monica pressed her palm to her belly, feeling the baby stir. At that moment, she realized every step left traces, no matter how hard Bradley tried. And for the first time, she didn't feel like prey. He looked more like a predator stumbling into his own snare. Still, the war of nerves didn't stop. That night, Monica found her car windshield slashed with a long blade mark, an unmistakable warning. Marcus inspected the scene, his face steel-hard. "He's desperate now. Desperate men make mistakes. Please leave it to me. You stay safe." But safety wasn't only locks and cameras. For Monica, it meant reclaiming her inner balance. Daniel kept her company each evening, telling simple stories about his childhood near the Texas border and his first bridges as an architect. He never mentioned Bradley unless she did. He filled the air with something ordinary, something human. One night, when the baby kicked hard, Monica burst into tears. Daniel gently touched her belly, feeling the life inside for the first time. His voice trembled. "She's telling you we'll be okay. No matter the darkness, there's still light here." Monica looked at him, realizing fear lingered but no longer ruled her. She had pieces of a shield with Daniel, Sophia, and Marcus. Together, they formed a wall against Bradley's psychological warfare. And she knew. The legal battle was approaching. The thicker his harassment grew, the stronger her case became. Every rose, knife mark, and shadow was a brick in the fortress they were building. Monica breathed deeply, meeting Daniel's eyes under the warm apartment light. "You're right. He's not winning. He's unraveling." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand. Outside, the war of nerves raged on. But inside, for the first time, Monica felt she could fight, and would never fight alone again. Rain drifted outside the apartment window as Monica returned from a long shift. Streetlights cast blurry golden streaks across the soaked pavement. She unlocked the door, and the aroma of stew filled the tiny room. Daniel stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair damp as though he'd just showered after a day at the construction site. "You cooked?" Monica asked, surprised, setting her bag down. Daniel turned with a warm smile. "Can't compete with your skills in the ER, but I hope it's edible." She laughed for the first time in days. That sound softened the tension that had weighed on her for weeks. Monica hung her coat, sat at the table, and watched Daniel serve the food. He poured her a cup of warm water, setting it carefully before her. They discussed ordinary things throughout dinner: a difficult patient on Monica's shift, the bridge project Daniel supervised, and college basketball games from years past. Monica realized she hadn't had such a peaceful evening in months without Bradley, threats, or legal talk. After the meal, Daniel began clearing the table. Monica stood to help, but he stopped her gently. "Sit down. You've done enough today." She meant to argue, but her hand had already rested over her belly, where the baby stirred softly. Daniel noticed. He came closer, placing his hand lightly over hers. The touch made her throat tighten. "I know you're worried about the future," Daniel said quietly, his gaze fixed on her stomach. "But you're not alone. I want, if you'll let me, to be this child's father." Monica's breath caught, her heart aching. For months, she had thought of the baby as a burden, a reminder of a crime. Now, hearing Daniel call it his child, her vision blurred. "You don't have to," she whispered, shaking her head. "This baby isn't yours. I don't want you to feel trapped." Daniel's grip tightened slightly, his eyes steady. "I'm not saying this out of duty. I'm saying it out of love. I love you, Monica." And I love this baby no matter whose blood runs in its veins. I choose you. I choose both of you, with everything I have." Monica broke into tears, warm streams running down her face. His words melted the ice she had carried in her heart. For the first time, someone spoke of the child not with threats, but with love. Daniel pulled her into his arms, whispering against her hair, "I promise, I won't leave. I'll fight beside you until you and the baby are safe. That's my vow." In his embrace, Monica felt sheltered. Fear still existed. Bradley was still out there, but in that moment, she allowed herself to believe that love could be the strongest wall. After her tears had dried that night, they sat together on the couch. Outside, the rain tapped gently, a soundtrack to the promise just spoken. Monica leaned her head on his shoulder, hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked softly, as if reminding them it was listening too. "I'm scared," Monica whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm scared you'll realize this is too heavy one day and walk away, that you'll regret choosing a woman carrying a child that isn't yours." Daniel turned, lifting her chin so her eyes met his. "Listen to me, Monica. I don't see a burden. I see a brave woman, standing tall after everything. I see a child who deserves love. I choose you both. This isn't an obligation, it's my dream." She let out a shaky laugh through tears. "Your dream?" "Yes," Daniel nodded, his smile tender. "To have a family, not a perfect one, but a real one where people protect each other, no matter the past. And I believe you're the part I've been searching for." His words made Monica's heart quiver. Years in the ER had shown her how fragile life could be. Accidents, illness, sudden deaths. But tonight, she saw another truth. Some bonds were strong enough to defy fragility. They sat silently for a long while, the rain and their heartbeats the only sounds. Then Daniel pulled a blanket over her shoulders. "Sleep. You have an early shift tomorrow. And you?" she asked. "I'll stay here, on the couch," he said. "So, you won't wake up in an empty apartment." Monica hesitated, then whispered, "You could stay in the room. No need for the couch." Daniel searched her eyes, understanding that the invitation was about trust, not desire. He nodded. "I'll stay, to keep you safe." That night, Monica slept in Daniel's arms, dreamless, undisturbed. For the first time in months, sleep came as salvation. Morning light slipped through the curtains. Monica woke to find Daniel still beside her, his hand resting lightly on her belly, his breathing steady. In that moment, she knew his vow wasn't just words. It was already real in the smallest ways. A night of peaceful sleep, a morning touched with light. She drew a long breath and whispered, "Maybe I can start dreaming too." Outside, the battle with Bradley still raged, both legal and psychological. But inside the small apartment, between a growing heartbeat and a man's vow, Monica found the strength to go on. The news came on a grey Monday morning. Sofia Ramirez called Monica and Daniel to her law office, her tone urgent. "Bradley is preparing to file a paternity petition in court. If the judge accepts, he'll gain a legal opening to interfere in the baby's life. We need a strategic move immediately." Monica felt the blood drain from her face. The thought of Bradley touching her child made her chest seize. "Is there any way to stop him?" she asked, her voice trembling. Sofia nodded, eyes steady. "Yes. If you marry before the baby is born, the law presumes Daniel is the legal father. That makes it far harder for Bradley to intrude. But," she paused, fixing her gaze on Monica, "this decision must come from real love, not just legal strategy. Because once married, you'll need Daniel beside you in every part of life." Monica turned to Daniel. He didn't blink, just clasped her hand, firm as a vow. "I've been ready for a long time. But the choice is yours, Monica. Not for the law, not for Bradley, only for us." She froze, memories flashing. Bradley's hand crushing her wrist, the white roses at the nurse's station, his laughter echoing in the hall. Then Daniel's eyes were in the trauma bay, his hand on her belly, and his whispered vow in the rain. Two worlds, utterly opposed. She knew where she belonged. "I agree," Monica said, her voice shaking but clear. "If marriage protects the baby and if it's what you want to, then I agree." Daniel's eyes glistened. "There's nothing I want more." 3 days later, they stood in the county courthouse. Sophia had arranged the paperwork swiftly, citing an emergency, safeguarding a pregnant woman from harassment and legal threats. The ceremony had no flowers or gown. Monica wore a simple blue dress, and Daniel wore the same suit he'd used for business conferences. But when the judge asked, "Do you take?" and Daniel answered, "I do," with resolute certainty, Monica knew it was the most critical moment of her life. Angela Daniels, Monica's mother, wept openly. Derek, her younger brother, laid a hand on her shoulder, his eyes heavy with worry and pride. In that small courtroom, Monica's family witnessed a new beginning. When the judge declared them husband and wife, Monica exhaled like breaking free from an invisible prison. Daniel squeezed her hand, whispering, "From now on, you and the baby carry my name. No one can take that away." The joy lasted only hours. That afternoon, anonymous texts flooded Monica's phone. Photos of her leaving the courthouse hand in hand with Daniel, captioned, "This charade won't save you." She handed the phone to Sophia, trembling. The lawyer only smirked. "Good. The more he texts, the thicker our case. He's backing himself into a corner." Daniel wrapped his arm around Monica. Today wasn't about him. It was about us. He can send all the threats he wants, but what he can't touch is the truth. We are a family now. Monica leaned against his chest. For the first time, the word family rang in her heart, not with pain, but with hope. After the marriage, life shifted immediately. The tiny apartment once meant for one now became a home for two, and the child growing inside. Daniel moved his clothes and papers in. His presence filled the spaces that had once been silence and fear. But Bradley's shadow pressed closer. 3 days after the wedding, rumors spread at the hospital. Monica had rushed into marriage to cover up an inappropriate relationship with a donor. Gossip flared like wildfire. Bradley's name always whispered with charm and power. Monica overheard nurses whispering. A doctor even asked bluntly, "Were you pressured into this?" Her heart sank. This was Bradley's tactic: sow suspicion, isolate the victim. When she told Sophia, the lawyer nodded coolly. "Good. Let him continue. Every rumor, every insinuation, is evidence of systemic harassment. What matters is that you don't waver. Remember, you're not alone." Marcus ramped up his watch. He caught Bradley slipping envelopes to tabloid reporters. "He thinks controlling the narrative is his best weapon," Marcus said grimly, "but we'll counter-strike." Daniel's approach was more straightforward. Presence. He picked Monica up after every shift, holding her hand openly, declaring with every step that she wasn't alone. Each touch steadied her, warmed her, reminded her of love. One evening, Daniel spread building plans across the table back at the apartment. "I started this before we married," he confessed, his eyes glowing. "A house room for the baby, a garden out back, a kitchen window facing the bay. I want it to be our true beginning." Monica's eyes blurred as she traced the nursery sketched in ink. She touched a future, untouched by Bradley's shadow for the first time. "Do you really believe we can escape him?" Daniel laid his hand over hers. "I don't believe I know. Because we're not fighting alone. We have Sophia, Marcus, and now the law on our side." Monica's phone buzzed again. "The baby will carry my name, not his." Her body shook, but Daniel calmly forwarded the message to Sophia. He kissed her forehead. "Every text is another brick in our legal wall. Don't let him steal this moment." Monica leaned into him. In that embrace, within the small apartment that had become their home, she knew. The emergency wedding wasn't just a legal tactic. It was their declaration, their defiance against the darkness, and she believed with love and allies they could endure to the end. Courtroom 4 of the Baltimore County Courthouse was packed that morning. Reporters filled the gallery, notebooks open, cameras flashing. A case involving a wealthy donor and a pregnant black nurse was the perfect spark for public attention. Monica sat at the plaintiff's table, her trembling hand resting over her belly. Daniel sat beside her, his warm hand covering hers, a steady anchor against the storm. Across the aisle, Bradley Whitmore strode in with a swarm of attorneys. His expensive suit and smug smile painted him like a benevolent saint. Photographers clicked furiously as he waved. Sofia Ramirez rose, straightening her blazer, her eyes sharp as blades. She knew this was more than a lawsuit. This was a battle for Monica's dignity and future. The trial began. Bradley's lead lawyer stood, voice smooth as silk. "Your Honor, my client is a respected philanthropist who has donated millions to Maryland's healthcare system. Tragically, he has been dragged into this fabricated tale, motivated by greed. We will prove that he is the true victim of malicious slander." Whispers rippled through the room. Monica bowed her head, her heart twisting. Then Sofia stood tall, her voice ringing out, "Your Honor, my client has nothing but the truth. We present clear evidence of harassment, intimidation, and privacy violations committed by Mr. Whitmore for months. This case is not about money, it is about justice, about the safety of a pregnant woman and her unborn child." Monica drew a deep breath. Every word from Sofia was a shield. The first exhibits appeared, photos of white rose bouquets with suggestive notes, each time-stamped. Next came the audio recording of Bradley directing a private investigator to bribe for Monica's medical records. Bradley's face flickered when the tape played, though he quickly masked it with a smirk. Marcus Rivera took the stand. His testimony was firm, describing surveillance records of Bradley lurking at the parking garage during Monica's shifts. "Coincidence doesn't repeat itself this many times," Marcus declared. Bradley's lawyers countered, spinning his behavior as concern for hospital staff, twisting predation into benevolence. Bradley even smiled at Monica, as if to suggest there had once been something real between them. Her chest tightened, but Daniel squeezed her hand. "Look at me," he whispered. "Don't let his eyes steal your strength." Monica lifted her gaze, meeting Daniel's. Love, not threat, looked back. For the first time, she refused to drown in silence. The trial entered day 2. Tension hung heavy. Today, Monica herself would testify. She stepped onto the stand, her hands trembling, but her stride steady. After the oath, Sofia approached gently. "Monica, tell us in your own words. Not for the press, not for the crowd, only for the truth." Monica inhaled deeply, then began. The Christmas party, the car in the dark garage, Bradley's hand clamping her wrist, the threats like a noose around her neck. Her voice cracked at times, but Daniel nodded from the bench each time her eyes faltered, lending her strength. When she reached the moment, Bradley pressed a hand against her belly and said, "This proves you belong to me." Her tears spilled. The courtroom fell silent. Even some reporters lowered their pens, unable to look directly. Then Bradley's lawyer rose, sneering, "Miss Daniels, if you tell the truth, why didn't you report to the police immediately? Why wait months? Was it perhaps because you wished to exploit my client's name for financial gain?" Monica bit her lip, chest tight. Then she lifted her head, voice unsteady but resolute. "Because I knew no one would believe a black nurse from West Baltimore. Because he was a millionaire donor praised in the press. And because I was terrified of losing my job, of being destroyed, of my baby being unsafe. But fear does not turn rape into consent. I stand here today because I refuse to let my silence continue to protect the man who hurt me." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Eyes turned toward Bradley with doubt now, his jaw clenched, his polished mask cracking. Finally, Sofia unveiled their strongest card, surveillance video Marcus had captured. The footage showed Bradley cornering Monica in the garage, his voice low but clear. "You belong to me, Monica. You can't run." The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder. Bradley's face paled. He leaned urgently toward his lawyer. But it was too late. The gallery had heard his unmasked voice, the predator behind the philanthropist. The judge struck the gavel, calling a recess for the jury to review the evidence. Monica stepped down from the stand, her knees weak. Daniel caught her as she returned to her seat. He whispered into her ear, "You just did what no one else could. You spoke the truth." Her eyes were wet, but inside her chest, something new burned, the strength of a woman no longer hiding. The trial was not over, but the scales of justice had begun to shift. Monica knew that this public confrontation was a turning point, not only for her, but also for her and her. News spread across Baltimore within a day of the trial's conclusion. After hours of deliberation, The jury delivered its verdict. Bradley Whitmore was guilty of harassment, intimidation, and unlawful interference with private medical records. The U.S. Attorney's Office swiftly expanded the investigation, uncovering old settlements with other victims buried under money and influence. The next morning's papers screamed the headline, "Millionaire philanthropist faces serious charges." Bradley's photo dominated the front page, no longer the glowing benefactor, but a man crumpled by exhaustion and fear. In her small apartment, Monica sat before the screen, hand resting on her full, round belly. The baby was nearly here, and at last, the world outside saw the monster that had haunted her for months. Daniel came from the kitchen, placing a warm glass of milk before her. "See?" he murmured. The light finally found him. Monica smiled faintly. Relief threaded through it. "I've waited for this moment so long, but I won't believe it completely until I see the cuffs on his wrists." Daniel pulled her close. "That moment will come, and when it does, you won't be free but reborn." A week later, it happened. Federal agents arrested Bradley at his company office, the cameras rolling live. Gone was the immaculate suit and smug smile. He was led out disheveled, pale, eyes wild. Monica burst into tears not from fear, but release. The city buzzed. Admirers turned to accusers. Hospitals severed ties. Powerful allies melted away. Bradley had fallen from hero to pariah overnight. Meanwhile, Monica entered her final weeks of pregnancy. Daniel took her to every appointment, listening to the baby's heartbeat, helping prepare a small nursery in the apartment, their temporary home, until they moved into the house he'd built. One evening, folding tiny baby clothes, Monica paused and looked at him. "Do you think our child will grow up carrying the shadow of my past?" Daniel set down his tools, knelt before her, and pressed a hand over hers. "No. She'll grow up knowing her mother was brave enough to stand when the world tried to silence her. She'll grow up knowing that love, not fear, defines family." Tears filled Monica's eyes as she embraced him. For the first time, freedom wasn't a dream. It was in her breath. The months turned, and March came, carrying winter's last chill. In the hospital delivery room, heat and tension filled the air. Monica lay drenched in sweat, gripping Daniel's hand. "You've got this," he whispered. "You're stronger than you know. We're about to meet her." Then her cry split the room, sharp and alive. Silence held for a heartbeat, then joy erupted. The midwife laid the baby girl on Monica's chest. Monica looked down at the tiny fists, the soft hair, and sobbed. "Welcome to the world. Isabella Rose," she whispered. Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead, unable to say more than a choked, "Thank you. Thank you to Monica, fate, and the miracle that love had risen out of pain." Weeks later, Monica sat in the garden of their new house, the house Daniel had rushed to finish for Isabella's arrival. Sunlight poured over her skin as Isabella dozed in her crib beside her. Daniel joined her with 2 mugs of coffee. "Do you remember the first time I saw you?" he asked crookedly. "I do," Monica said softly, stroking Isabella's hair. "You were the patient. I was the nurse. I thought I was saving your life. I never guessed you'd save mine." They laughed, and their laughter dissolved into quiet gratitude. Bradley faded into the background, sentenced to years behind bars. More women came forward, finding Sophia's office to tell their stories. A ripple of courage spread through the city's healthcare system, women refusing silence. Monica, no longer a victim, became a voice. She spoke at hospital forums, her words steady, no longer trembling. Each time she glanced at the audience, Daniel held Isabella, pride glowing in his eyes. One night, Monica turned to him after putting their daughter to sleep in her crib. "You know, I once thought our baby was the shadow of my past, but now I see she's our beginning. Every laugh, every step she'll take, it all proves the darkness didn't win." Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You're right. Freedom isn't just escaping evil. It's living, loving, building tomorrow our way." In the still night, with the wind whispering through the open window and Isabella's soft breathing mingling with their heartbeats, Monica closed her eyes. She knew her journey had ended one chapter of pain and begun another of hope. Freedom was no longer a distant dream. It was here alive, growing, breathing with them. And in the arms of her family, Monica knew she had won.